Good morning, dear students. A warm welcome to a new video on planning. Now, as the slide talks about the word plan, let us explain it in brief. So, plan is a document that outlines how goals are going to be met. It is a specific action proposed to help the organization achieve its objectives. There may be more than one way and means of reaching a particular goal, but with the help of logical plans, objectives of an organization could be achieved easily. Now, in this slide, we are going to talk about the steps in planning process. Let us list down the steps. So the first step talks about setting organizational objectives. The second step talks about developing planning premises. The third step focuses on identifying alternative course of action. The fourth step talks about evaluating alternative courses of action and selecting the best alternative. The fifth step talks about formulating or deriving plans. This last step talks about implementing the plan and follow-up action. So let's begin with the first step, that is setting organizational objectives. In planning function, managers begin with setting up objectives because all the policies, procedures and methods are framed for achieving objectives only. The managers set up very clearly the objectives of the organization, keeping in mind the goals of the company and the physical and financial resources of the company. Now let's move on to the second point, which talks about developing planning premises. Now how would we elaborate on this? Premises refers to making assumptions regarding future. Premises are the base on which plans are made. It is a kind of forecast made keeping in view existing plans and any past information about various policies. Now let's move on to the third step, which talks about identifying alternative course of action. Now, after setting up of objectives, the managers make a list of alternatives through which the organization can achieve its objectives, as there can be many ways to achieve the objective and managers must know all the ways to reach the objective. Now let's come down to the fourth step, which talks about evaluating alternative courses of action and selecting the best alternative. Now how do we explain? After making the list of various alternatives along with the assumptions supporting them, the manager starts evaluating each and every alternative and notes down the positive and negative aspects of every alternative. After this, the manager starts eliminating the alternatives with more of negative aspects and the one with the maximum positive aspect and with most feasible assumption is selected as best alternative. Alternatives are evaluated in the light of their feasibility. Now, let's move on to the next one where we are going to talk about formulating the derivative plans. The best alternative is selected, but as such, there is no mathematical formula to select the best alternatives. Sometimes, instead of selecting one alternative, a combination of different alternatives can also be selected. The most ideal plan is most feasible, profitable, and with least negative consequences. Now let's move on to the last step, which talks about implementing the plan and follow-up action. Let us discuss this in detail. The managers prepare or draft the main and supportive plans on paper, but there is no use of these plans unless and until they are put in action. Now let's talk about the follow-up action part. Planning is a continuous process, so the manager's job does not get over simply by putting the plan into action. The managers monitor the plan carefully while it is implemented. The monitoring of plan is very important because it helps to verify whether the conditions and predictions assumed in plan are holding true in present situation or not. Now in this slide we are going to talk about types of plans. So plans are broadly put into two categories. One is called as a single use plan and the other is called as standing plan. Now let us elaborate on the first one, that is single use plan. Single use plans are one-time use plan. These are designed to achieve a particular goal that once achieved will not reoccur in future. These are made to meet the needs of unique situation. Now let us talk about the second type of plan, and this is called as standing plan. Now how do we elaborate? Standing plans are also known as repeat use plans. These plans focus on situations which occur repeatedly. Standing plans are used over and over again. They are made once but retain their value over a period of years. Although some revisions and updates are made in these plans from time to time. Now, let us talk about the type of plans in detail. So let's talk about the first type of plan, and this is called as objectives. Objectives are defined as ends which the management seeks to achieve within a given time period. Example, increasing sales by 10% in the next quarter. Now, we always have to set SMART objectives. Now, what do you mean by the word SMART objectives? S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for relevant, and T stands for time-bound targets to be achieved. Objectives are neither single-use nor standing plans. Now let's move on to the second point, and here it talks about policy. Policy is general, which bring uniformity in decision making for achievement of predetermined objectives. Let us elaborate on this point. Policies can be defined as organizations' general response to a particular problem or situation. In other words, it is organization's own way of handling the problems. Problems are common in business world and for every organization. Policies are made at every level because the managers at every level need to decide or predetermine the way of handling a situation, and policy acts as a guide to take decisions in unexpected situations. Now let's talk about the next plan, which is called as strategy. Strategy is a comprehensive plan for achieving an organization's objectives. Now let us explain. A strategy helps in determining the long-term objectives of a business. It helps in adapting a particular course of action. Strategy also helps in allocating resources for achieving these objectives. Now let's move to the next type of plan, and this is called as procedure. In simple words, procedure consists of sequential steps to carry out activities within policy framework. Let us elaborate. Procedures are required steps established in advance to handle future conditions. The sequence of steps to be followed by employees in different situations must be predetermined so that everyone follows the same steps. The procedure can be defined as the exact manner in which an activity has to be accomplished. In this slide, we'll talk about rule. So let us elaborate on this. Rules spell out special actions or non-actions of the employee. There is no discretion allowed in rules. They must be followed strictly, and if rules are not followed, then strict actions can be taken against employees who are disobeying the rules. Rules are spelled out to create the environment of discipline in the organization. Now let us move on to the next plan, which is called as method. In simple words, method is the standardized way or prescribed manner in which a take has to be performed considering the objectives. Let us elaborate. Methods can be defined as formalized or systematic way of doing routine or repetitive jobs. The managers decide in advance the common way of doing a job so that there is no doubt in the minds of employees and there can be uniformity in actions of the employees. This will help in applying the techniques of standardization and simplification, and it will also act as guide for employees. Now let us talk about the next plan, and this is called as budget. So in brief, we say budget is a plan which states expected results of a given future period in numerical terms. Now let us elaborate. Budget is the statement of expected result expressed in numerical terms. In budgets, the results are always measurable and most of the time they are financial in nature. But it does not mean the company only prepares financial budget. They also prepare operational budget. Now, let's move on to the last plan, and this is called as program. Programs are the combination of objectives, policies, procedures, and rules. All these plans together form a program. The programs are made to get a systematic working in the organization. These programs create a relation between policies, procedures, and goals. The programs are also prepared at different levels. Thank you, children, for being patient.